Hey, horror fans, Pete here, and I am with my other co-host with the most, Mr. Danny Torkel. Danny, happy summer, midsummer point for you. You're just starting your summer break, right?
About a week and a half in. Yeah, here in New York, we start our vacation a little bit later than you guys. We work till the dead end of June, so
Yeah.
enjoying it. Had a nice fourth, and now looking forward to talk about the horror movies that have come out so far this year. I think it's been a pretty good year so far.
Yes, yes. You know, you and I, we've been doing the Last Cast for almost 2 years now. And a lot of time what happens is I get kind of held back doing stuff for my other channels and life and stuff. And I don't watch as many horror movies as you do. Then at the end of the year, there's this big scramble on my end to kind of catch up. And I miss a lot. But this year, I've just been able to kind of watch more movies. And so it's real exciting for me to be able to do this like mid-year review with you right now. And it's kind of funny because like usually you watch like at least 3 times as much as me, but I think this time around our numbers are kind of closer.
Yeah, I that list that I texted you, I like missed a few, and then I watched two movies over the last day and a half. Including finishing one like right before I went to bed last night that is actually going to be pretty high up on my mid-year list. So yeah, I'm just I love I I feel like this year so far has hit a really good balance where there's been some legitimate blockbuster horror movies that have come out making shit tons of money. I mean, obviously, I could see the image up there. Like Scream is obviously the big one in terms of money making. It was so lucrative. They already have. I think they're already filming part six.
Yeah.
Um, we did a deep dive about the Black Phone, which is continuing to make a hell of a lot of money. And then there's been a lot of these kind of lower budget films that have taken a shot at like a minor theatrical release that I was happy to go and see. There's been a lot of stuff put out on streaming services. Shutter's released a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah.
I found a lot of like lower budget films on Vudu and other streaming networks. So it's just been a really good year so far. I think there's been a wide range of films to come out, and if it's only July 6th, then it's a good sign for our year-end review when we do our top 10, probably early in 2023. I think we're off to a good start.
I completely agree. It's kind of funny when I make these backgrounds for our videos, I always think about where our pictures are going to go on the screen and like what the audience is going to see. And I actually put a slew of movie posters, but I never get it right. So all you see is like the top of Ghostface head and like a little bit of like the grabber's hat in the corner over there. But there's actually like a whole bunch of movie posters behind us. I just didn't time it right. And the background is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 cornfield too.
Yeah,
so that's
I'm glad you put that in. That's great. I'm glad you used that. That's awesome.
I'm sure it's going to be on one of your lists. The question is, which list is it going to be? And so I mentioned like what people can see because we also do our podcast too. You can also just listen to this. And we're like on our podcast, we're like around episode, I think like 76 or so. That's pretty cool, right?
Crazy.
Yeah. So almost 2 years in, 76 podcast episodes going. Danny, for our lists today, how are we breaking down our lists?
So I think we talked about this a little bit before. I think that the three categories we should go in, and I'll leave it up to you to make the order of how we talk about them. But
sure.
I'm gonna just list the lists from bottom to top, and that is our disappointments. The movies that didn't hit the mark for us this year. Then I think probably my most crowded category, which are the movies that either met or exceeded my expectations. And then like the cream of the crop, the movie, to quote Macho Man, ooh yeah, the cream of the crop rises to the top. Yeah. Snap into a Slim Jim.
Yeah.
So I think those are the three steps, the movies that they didn't really do it for us. maybe they do it for you, the audience, but they didn't do it for us. The movies that were right there, did exactly what we wanted them to do, maybe even exceeded our expectations. And then just those, you really need to go out of your way to see these. These are movies that might end up making our top tens by the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And the fun thing about these lists, these three lists, is that Danny and I, we didn't make like one list as a group. I have my own list and Danny has his own list. So there's probably going to be things that are on my like best of that maybe are on Danny's disappointments list, and there might be vice versa. So I figured, why don't we go from kind of negative to more positive? And so let's just kind of start off with those movies that didn't hit the mark. And for me, I actually only have one movie on that list. I think I've seen in 2022, I think I've seen like at least 10 horror movies. And out of those 10, there's only one that didn't hit that mark for me. And I don't know if you remember it, but it is Slapface.
Yes. I hate to even say it like this, but I didn't even put that down on the paper. That was a Shudder exclusive. I actually saw the short film from the same director that he elongated, and I just felt it worked really well as a short film. I remember really enjoying his short film, and I was kind of disappointed with this one too. Yeah.
Yeah. Danny and I always kind of like talk about like, well, what should we review? And we talk about things that are coming out in Shudder, and he had this experience with this short. And so we're like, yeah, let's cover that. And then just as I was watching it, just wasn't really catching my interest. I do think that there's potential, especially since you like that short so much. I think that there's potential for this director. It's just that with this movie, I just found myself ultimately not being interested. So that's the only one that made my disappointments list. I think my disappointments list maybe would have been a little bigger had I seen a couple of more movies. And I think I know at least one on your list.
So I don't have a very big list. I didn't even put Slapface on there. There was this really cheesy shark movie I saw called The Requiem with Alicia Silverstone. But because I've never made it a secret, Jaws is my favorite movie of all time. I rate shark movies on a different scale. So, the fact that it is a shark movie automatically doesn't disappoint me. Like it, I love shark movies. The only three movies I had on my disappointment list, one of them we spent a lot of time talking about, and that was Mad God. And I want to preface, just like I did with our deep dive review that we did, the movie impressed the hell out of me, and I have nothing but respect for Phil Tippett and the amazing stop motion, go motion effects that he uses. He is the heir apparent of Ray Harryhausen. He's a genius at what he does. This movie was not for me. It was very non-narrative, not a clear narrative structure. And a lot of the imagery to me just felt kind of gross. And I found myself wanting to turn the movie off, like being impressed with what I was watching, but wanting to turn it off. And I couldn't put it. I think I even said this in our review. I would recommend everybody watch it and form their own opinion, just not for me. So that was a legitimate disappointment. I was really excited for that, and it really just didn't do it for me. The other two, I actually watched this movie a couple days ago. I rented it on Vudu, Dashcam, which is by the makers of Host, which was such an impressive horror film. It was only an hour long, came out during the pandemic. It was filmed on Zoom, I think, right?
Right.
And the same group of people made this movie Dashcam. And again, kind of like Mad God, I respect the way they do these movies with the technology that they use. The lead character, the protagonist of this movie is quite possibly the most unlikable human being I've ever seen in a horror movie.
Wow.
And it's done on purpose, but like that's just her character. But she's so unlikable that I couldn't get into the movie. I just hated this character so much that I was just like, this movie is really annoying, and she's so annoying that I want to turn the movie off.
So what's up with that? Like, what's so annoying about her?
She's written as this. She's a like an anti-vax, far right person who she does like all she does is like rap in her car, and every rap is just like sexual and off and like off color humor.
Yeah.
And then she flies to England to surprise her friend, but she's just an annoying human being. Like, aside from her political views, which are whatever, she's just an awful like just a terrible person. And it's impossible. Like, when terrible people are put into scary situations, you kind of just root for them to get killed quickly so you don't have to deal with them. And unfortunately, she's the main character of this 70-minute movie, and it made it feel like it was 2.5 hours.
Oh, so, okay.
Again, if you replace her, or not even because the woman was good, because I'm assuming she was written to be this despised character. If she was any other character, I probably would have really liked this movie, because it does have some really creative use of the technology. It's all filmed on, cell phones and live streaming, and so it's kind of cool in that regard. I just really hated the main character. And speaking of hating main characters, the obvious one that is on this list is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. With no, listen, basically, when I go online and I see the reaction to this movie, I see a lot of people are like, what did you expect?
Yeah.
It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You should just be happy that you have slasher movies like this.
Yeah.
And I honestly think those people either never saw or just completely don't understand what the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was.
Yeah.
And they try to do this legacy sequel thing where they bring back the character of Sally Hardesty. And I felt embarrassed watching this movie. I felt genuine embarrassment. I felt embarrassed for the people acting in it. It is easily the worst thing I've seen this year, with the exception maybe of Jurassic Park Dominion. It's the worst movie I've seen this year. It's probably I don't think it's a far cry to say I fucking hate this movie. But yeah, that's it. That's my disappointment list. It's 3 movies essentially.
It's funny because you said something when you were talking about dash cam, right? You're talking about how the character's really obnoxious. I haven't seen the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I know that there's this scene where Leatherface like slaughters a whole bunch of like sort of like millennials or whatever that are on a bus, right? It's interesting because our world is just so like everything's so fucking aggressive these days. Everyone hates each other. You go on Twitter and it just feels like we live in the fucking wild, wild west. And everyone wants to kill each other. It's just virtual. And now I think that horror kind of captures that. And you have people that are like very firm believers that are like, oh, we don't like this type of person. And I think it's weird because it like they kind of either make fun of people that are super conservative and they're the butt of the joke, or they're the people that you want to kill off, or they make fun of like super liberal people and they're the kind of people that you want to kill off.
That bus scene, like, I know a lot of people are like, that was so awesome. Leatherface goes crazy. He's killing all these woke. And I'm like, I don't care who they are. Like, that,
have you seen the trailers for that movie with Pete Davidson that's called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies? Have you seen the trailer for that?
No.
So yeah, like both times that I've gone to see a horror movie in the theater recently, like I saw Men and I saw The Black Phone, and both times they showed this Pete Davidson trailer for it's a movie called Bodies, 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 and it kind of reminds me of like what's that movie with James Franco and it's got like all those girls in it? It's like Spring Breakers.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So like in that movie, in the trailer, they do this almost like little montage where they're saying all kind of like woke or like liberal things, where they're like, oh, you're gaslighting me, you're doing this, and like they're kind of making fun of that, right, in the trailer. And it's weird because you always think that like Hollywood and stuff always kind of leans left, but they also do kind of parody this kind of stuff. And I guess like when it comes to horror, I think if it's done right, it's really good. And some of the movies on my best of list tackle this kind of stuff, and they do it in a good way, and they satirize certain things. But then the things that are on the bottom, it's like so heavy-handed, so in your face, and that's what it sounds like for Dash Cam, like what you were saying, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like,
Yeah.
Do you remember those movies that they would make, like where it was like Scary Movie 2, and then they would
Of
do
course.
like Epic Movie? Those movies are just like, here, I'm just referencing this thing. Look, here's Jack Sparrow. This is funny. Like, I think when they make fun of like liberal people or woke people, or the opposite, if they're just doing like the obvious speaking points, it's just annoying. It's not even like interesting or engaging. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's definitely like I feel like even in Scream they cover a lot of that with like the whole um Reddit idea, that there's this idea in there about like horror having to deal with the toxicity of the internet and politicization. I don't know. Maybe politicizing issues. I think Scream like tackled that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm looking at some of the movies on my list, and like, I feel like, well, yeah, actually, I don't want to spoil some of the movies that are on my list. We'll get to them. But like a lot of these movies do talk about like topical things. I just feel like when it's in your face and it's not clever, it's annoying. And it's kind of interesting.
My least favorite movies are, I call them sledgehammer movies. Right. Movies that they have a point to make and an agenda, and they have no subtlety, and they're just gonna beat it into you with a freaking sledgehammer, and you're gonna get it.
Right.
The 2019 remake of Black Christmas is the prime example of a horror sledgehammer movie. That movie had no intentions of being scary. It had no intention of being an homage to the original Black Christmas. It just wanted to make a point. Men are bad. And You know what? Here's the crazy thing. You can do that without insulting your audience.
Yeah.
And it's not just horror. There have been Best Picture winners that I've walked out of hate, like Crash. I went to see Crash with two friends. Literally 3 minutes into the movie, I turned to them and I went, "Oh my God, I'm going to hate this movie." And we all kind of laughed about it. And the movie ended and we walked out and we were like, that was so bad. And then it won Best Picture. And I was like, I just don't get it anymore.
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of movies that I feel that way about that go beyond horror. Like I'll alienate the crowd. I didn't like WALL-E. I didn't like Her with Joaquin Phoenix because I felt like for 2 hours, the movie was going, do you get it? Do you get it? We're obsessed with technology now. We don't know how to talk to people. Do you get it? And with WALL-E, it's like, we're fat. We're really fat and we don't move and we're going to destroy our planet. Do you get it? And I just wanted to scream at the screen. I fucking get it. Do something.
Damn.
Mid-year review. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, we both just got on our soapboxes, but it's kind of fun because that's what this stuff does. Horror now more than ever, I feel like really people are like, getting their viewpoints out there. Really, there's the agendas. Yeah, and those sledgehammer points, it's just like it's too much for me. It turns me off. When we get to my best of list, there's going to be some movies where I think they did it right, and we can go into detail about that. And then I feel like now the movies that are in this section of the list are movies that they're just kind of in the middle and they do their thing, but they don't hit you with an agenda. They don't hit you over the head with something. And for me, my movies that were good and hit the mark, but could have been like great. My first one that I have is Scream 2022. We were just talking about Scream.
It's on my list too. I feel like a lot of people had very polarizing reactions to Scream. I think a lot of people walked out of it and they were like, this is the best Scream movie since the first one. And I think a lot of people walked out and they were like, well, this is the worst Scream movie I've ever seen. I was firmly in the middle. To me, this was somewhere, to me, and it's always been like this. To me, there's 1996 Scream, the OG, and then there's Scream 3 down here. Yeah. And to me, the other three movies, 2, 4, and this one, I kind of feel live in that middle where every time I rewatch this franchise, I feel like I'm going to have a different order. I walked out of this the first time and I went, this is probably the best one since the original. And then I saw it with Charlotte and she really liked it. And I walked out and I was like, you know, I kind of picked up on some issues. I think I like 4 and maybe even 2 better, but it's still definitely better than 3. At the end of the day, this was a totally fun Scream movie. I saw it twice in theaters, enjoyed it, recommend it. It's not the best. It's not going to make my top 10 list, but it was good. It was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was good as well. One of the best things about Scream and Scream 2 is that the cast of characters, you care for so many of them, right? I think that like there's a couple of characters in Scream 2 I could give 2 shits about, but then there's some new additions that are good too. And you have a lot of the surviving characters from the first movie. I mean, you always have Dewey and Gale and Sydney, but you still had Randy in Scream 2. Spoilers for Scream 2. And then in this movie, you introduce a whole slew of new characters, and you got Jack Quaid playing a guy. You got Jenna Ortega, who we should just talk about her at some point during this review too.
I wrote down at the bottom here, my mid-year MVP is Jenna Ortega. Because that girl at what, 20 years old is becoming basically Jamie Lee Curtis from the end of the 70s into the 80s. That girl is just taking over horror. She was in Scream, X, Studio 666. Aside from that, she's actually a really good actress who's done great work in other movies. But yeah, she's fantastic. I'm super excited for her to be coming back. And I really do hope she becomes like the new Sydney type.
Yeah. And so she was really great in this. She kind of has that Drew Barrymore kind of role in the beginning, but she survives. And then you also have Jasmine Savoy Brown, who I'm a big fan of because of Yellow Jackets. And then she was like Randy's, I guess, niece in this.
Oh, and she's the new Randy. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, she's a twin, but I feel like she stood out a lot more than her twin brother.
Yeah.
So these great additions to the cast of the Scream mythos. So you guys, if you like this review that we're doing, you should go check out our Scream review because we do a full in-depth review of Scream 2022. But I said in that review that pretty much once you find out who the killers are, like all tension completely leaves the movie, and it's just kind of like, okay, let's get to the end.
I thought it was one of the lamer killer reveals. I thought one of them especially was blatantly obvious from like almost the opening scene. And I thought the movie has a weak, I don't want to even say third act, maybe fourth act, like final 10 to 15 minutes, you know?
Yes.
But still, like, I feel like one of the things that gets lost in modern film criticism is that I think a lot of times we walk into movies and we expect them to either be the greatest thing we've ever seen, best picture caliber, top 10 of the year, or absolute dog shit. And like, sometimes it's nice to just see a good movie, like a movie that's 3 stars, a movie that doesn't try to be anything more than it is,
Yeah.
A movie that's well acted, well directed. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the movies in this category for me. Like I, I'll give you another
Go ahead.
couple from my list. Like Studio 666.
Okay.
Uh, like the Foo Fighters wrote a horror movie. Dave Grohl wrote a horror movie. They all star in the movie. It is filled with some of the best practical gore effects I've seen this year.
Right.
It goes on probably 10 to 15 minutes too long for what it's trying to do, but it's really a lot of fun. And I sat almost alone in the movie theater watching it, going like, I wish more people had seen this movie. I hope it gets like a cult following on Blu-ray or on streaming, because
Yeah.
it was really fun, you know. And there's a couple movies like that are on my list also.
Give me some more. Give me some more from your list.
Well, I know. Did you see Crimes of the Future?
I have not.
So I put Crimes of the Future in my kind of good category.
Right.
To me, my nitpick about this movie is that just as I felt it was really getting going, it just ended. And I literally, like, I turned to the people behind me in the movie theater, and like the credits started rolling, and I went, huh? And I literally turned back and I was like, that's really the end? And they went, yeah, that was weird. It just kind of abruptly ends. But it's typical Cronenberg body horror, weird ideas, you know, technology, the future, all sorts of weird shit.
Right.
If you're a Cronenberg fan, you'll definitely like it. A movie we talked about, we did a deep dive of Off Season. I put that on my list. Just a really good little 85-minute horror movie on Shudder.
Yes.
A movie that I really liked and that our former partner Chris didn't like, The Cellar, which is another Shudder exclusive.
Okay.
I thought I had a lot of issues with it, but I also thought it had some of the legit scariest moments of the year. It makes like counting to 10 actually kind of terrifying. And it reminded me of a lot of other good kind of like haunted house style movies like The Changeling and The Beyond. So I put that on the list. I think that's another 90-minute Shudder movie that's well worth people seeking out.
Sure.
Hellbender was just on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In. It's another Shudder movie that got released in February. Super duper fun, great soundtrack. Yeah, movies like that. And then if you really want to just watch, if you want to just turn completely to the dark side and witness the death of humanity, you can watch The Sadness, which is on Shudder, which is one of the most brutal, absolutely disgusting, sickening movies I've ever seen. And it lives up to the hype that it has, because the hype is this is the most sickening and disgusting movie that you will see. It's that freaking brutal. It does not like ever stop. Like every time you're like, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. They're like, no, watch. This is the worst thing you've ever seen. You're like, oh God.
Yeah.
And
man.
So I put that in. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I like your list. We have something in common on there. Off Season, which we did a review of too, that is on the list for me as well. For my list, because I think that you really you hit the nail on the head with this, where you said that it's like these are good movies. You know, they're just movies. They're not going to be like, you know, life-changing, amazing movies that everyone raves about, and they're not going to be these horrible pieces of dog shit. They're just good movies. And for me, like, that was The Black Phone. I'm guessing it's on another list of yours, but I feel like you hit the nail on the head, where you're like, okay, it's like a good movie, but it's not like a life-changing kind of amazing movie. That's what I felt like The Black Phone was for me. I already said Scream 2022. And then for a movie that had disturbing things in it, not as bad as what you're saying about The Sadness, but it did have some really disturbing imagery in it. I also have The Feast. See, I liked The Feast a lot. I thought The Feast was really, really good. I'm not going to put it on my best of 2022 list. I might, depending on what the other half of the year entails. Maybe there's going to be a steep drop off for the rest of the year.
So
Go ahead.
I think I recommended The Feast to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a Welsh movie. I think it's on Hulu. Now,
yes.
When I make like lists like this, I always look at movies where like I'll give you an example. Hellbender and trying to think what the other one was. Hellbender especially, it's listed as 2021, but it like debuted in America in 2022, so I count it. I didn't put The Feast on my list because it said it debuted last year, but I watched it this year and I freaking loved it. And I would have put it in my top tier list because I thought that movie had some of the most shocking imagery. I think beautifully disgusting is a way I would describe that movie.
Yeah.
Really, really sick shit.
Yeah, I agree. Like, so I put like in my notes, I have visually amazing. And then, okay, so here's my question. This is going to show my ignorance, and I'm embarrassed putting this on the internet. But like Wales, I thought that was a part of the United Kingdom. Am I completely wrong?
No. So no, you're right. So the UK. Okay, so I think it breaks down like this: the UK is the island of Great Britain.
Yes.
And Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Then you have Great Britain, which is just the island that has on it England, Scotland, and Wales.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I'm 99% sure that's the way it goes. You have the island of Great Britain, which is England, Scotland, and Wales, and the United Kingdom is that island and Northern Ireland, which is obviously attached to Ireland, the island of Ireland.
Okay. Because like they were speaking another language, and it says Welsh, and I was like, wait a minute, I thought Christian Bale was Welsh, and then I was just like, isn't Wales just like Britain basically, and it's just one part of it? But they were speaking a totally different language altogether. I feel very ignorant.
No, I think it's England is the southern part of the island, and then you have the north. The northwest is Wales, and the northeast is Scotland. I don't know.
If someone in the who's watching, if they want to leave a comment, if you're from Wales or you know what we're talking about,
I actually have a giant globe right here. Let's see.
We get a nice little shot of Danny's ear too.
Oh, hey. Oh. Yeah, so Scotland is in the northern part of the island of Great Britain. And I think Wales is on the western coast of the island. So you have England. England is kind of the south and then kind of coming up along the east coast. Then you have the western coast is Wales, and then Scotland is up north.
Okay. Well, to me, it felt like a completely different country, like it was, Scandinavia or something. But like, we were talking about it being like visually amazing. It kind of reminds me of like Prometheus or even Alien Covenant, because I think that Ridley Scott is just he has an amazing eye, just great. He knows how to use a cinematographer, right? And that's what I got the feeling of for this movie, that it just was like this beautiful looking movie, but then it was also like gross, like disturbing as hell. Sherry kind of, because I watched it with Sherry, and she kind of compared it to Kubrick a little bit too, like some of the shots.
I could see that.
Yeah. It's interesting because like the director is Lee Haven Jones, and they've directed a lot of TV shows, but I think this was like one of their only, like maybe they've done like one or two features. This is one of them. So
I mean,
think they did a fucking fantastic job.
That's the type of movie where I watch it and I go back to one of the things I always say, which is, this is why I watch foreign films. This is why I watch foreign horror movies, because they can just get away with stuff that they would in America, for obvious reasons. You always have to think about the marketing of a movie, who's going to see it, how much money it's going to make. And in other countries, especially with horror, they just seem to, the art kind of carries what they want, really.
Right, right.
So
yeah, and it's interesting because like there's not that much dialogue in the movie, and then like the main character barely speaks at all. Ans Uli, I'm hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right, but she plays Kadi,
yeah,
and she like hardly speaks in the whole movie. And you're wondering for like the first, I don't know, 20 minutes to half hour, you're like, okay, what's going on with this girl? There's something up. You don't know what it is. I kind of was able to guess eventually. And it was a satisfying thing of like what actually was going on. I don't want to
Yeah.
spoil it for people who haven't seen it. But basically, she is this person that's helping out at this family's get together. It's an intimate gathering, but the feast is basically, it's not a cannibalism thing. It's, you know, like, oh, there's going to be this dinner party. And she's just kind of quietly going through their house, looking at their things, doing kind of odd things. You're like, what the fuck is up with this girl? And then eventually by the film's end, you know what's going on.
yeah.
And it's deeply
It
disturbing.
had a very folk horror vibe to it, almost Midsummer like in a way.
Yes. Yeah. I saw one of the you know, reviews or whatever said folk horror, and I was like, oh, I love me some folk horror when it's done well.
Yeah. The only other movie I want to mention in my like good category, and then I'm kind of ready to go into the top tier, was this little really interesting movie by Gene Schoenbrunn called We're All Going to the World's Fair. I rented it on Vudu for like a couple bucks. It's this really weird movie about a young girl who is doing the World's Fair Challenge. It's all filmed, almost entirely filmed on a laptop through what
webcam?
Yeah, through webcam, where she's recording herself doing the World's Fair Challenge, which is kind of like a creepypasta. You go to like the World's Fair website, you watch a video, and it's supposed to like alter your body and mind. And she like records herself watching it, and then like watching herself over the next 30 days. And it is, I wouldn't put it in my top tier. I had a few little issues with it, but there are some genuinely ridiculously creepy moments in there.
Okay.
It kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you remember the first time that you saw Paranormal Activity, right?
Yes.
And so you're watching the screen, and there's long parts of Paranormal Activity where you're watching them sleep and nothing happens. And those moments are the scariest moments in the movie, because you're like, well, something's going to happen. Something has to happen, right? And then like the door will shift 3 inches, and you're like, what the fuck? And there's moments in this movie, We're All Going to the World's Fair, that reminded me of that, where it's like you're sitting there and like the girl will be like, all right, I'm gonna try to get some sleep, and she's just sitting there, and you're like, okay, how long is the computer just gonna stay on her? And like, whoa, what the hell? So I definitely have to recommend that. I thought that was very good, especially I think it's extremely low budget. It was done mostly on webcams. I think there's only like two actors in the whole movie. So yeah, that's another one worth checking out.
Well, what's that streaming on?
I rented it on Vudu.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you bring that up about the idea of like, you know, it's low budget and there's only a few characters in it, because that is probably the reason why horror has excelled so much in the last like 3 years or so, right? Because it's the whole COVID effect, right? Where it's like you can still make this tense horror movie with like 3 people or 2 people or 4 people. And I think that we're not like out of that bubble yet. I think we're still seeing movies that were made during COVID. And so, I mean, COVID's still going on, right? But it really lends itself to effective horror movies. And I think if I look at my top list of movies, right, there's only one that has kind of an extensive cast. Otherwise, the majority of the movies that I have on my best of list are like 2 to 3 people tops, you know? So let's go to the cream of the crop, as you said, Macho Man said. And here's the deal. I think that one of these
you have not seen, and I definitely don't want to spoil it for you.
I know exactly which one you're going to say, and I would like you to not spoil it, but I think I know what it is.
Okay. Want to take a guess then?
I think it's Men.
It's Men. That's right. That's right. Men probably already gets a pass for me because it's written and directed by Alex Garland, and I am a huge Alex Garland fan. Just for people, just as a refresher, he's directed Annihilation and Ex Machina and this. Annihilation, I think, is this like super underrated, great, fucking visually disturbing sci-fi movie. Ex Machina, I think, is fantastic. He wrote those as well. He also has written 28 Days Later. I never saw The Beach, but I think it's probably exciting from what people have told me. Sunshine, which I feel is like kind of an unseen great sci-fi movie.
One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah,
and I'm in the minority in that I actually like the ending. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's a great movie" until the ending. I think it's a great movie, and then the ending actually makes it even better. So I'm in that weird.
Yeah. And so then there's Dredd too. You know, Carl Urban playing Judge Dredd, and that's another movie. Like he has all these movies that, you know, they're these great movies. They look like they cost a lot of money. Some of them did cost a lot of money, and I feel like everybody kind of knows about them, but they don't have that sort of mass blockbuster appeal. And so it feels like they're almost like these blockbuster level movies made like intimately, like they're for me. Oh, cool. Thank you, Sunshine. You know? And so Men, I do feel like is I don't think it's in the same league as the rest of these movies. I don't think it's as good. And I think if I was to explain why I don't think it's as good, it would spoil it for you. So I don't want to do that. However, I just really, because he directed it and because the two stars are Jessie Buckley, who is just like this sort of, she's on the rise. You know, she's not necessarily like a horror person, but she's just showing up in everything nowadays. She was in the most recent season of Fargo, and she was like incredible in that. And then Rory Kinnear, he's kind of like this British actor that I think Americans aren't as familiar with, but Brits are probably pretty familiar with. He's in all the James Bond movies with Daniel Craig. And he also played Frankenstein's monster on Penny Dreadful, and he was just fantastic in that.
Oh.
Did you you've watched a lot of Black Mirror, right?
Yeah.
You know the very first episode where the president or the prime minister has to fuck a pig?
Yeah.
He's the guy that fucks the pig.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's like a British mainstay, and he's really good in this. It is also like The Feast, where it's like this beautiful looking movie, and yet there's like crazy disturbing shit. The ending is real disturbing, but I don't want to spoil it for you. I
was so into the trailer for this movie, and it just was a thing where it was only playing at my theater, the theater closest to me, for like 2 weeks, and I just couldn't figure out a time to go see it. And I it's one of those movies where now that you're bringing it back up, and I don't have it on my list, that I'm probably going to rent and watch this week since Charlotte's away at Sleepaway Camp. And preview. I mentioned this in my July preview, but as soon as she gets home, we're actually going to watch Sleepaway Camp and then do a video review of that.
Perfect.
Yeah, Athena would not let me under any circumstances watch Sleepaway Camp with her before she went, which good idea.
Good call, Athena. Yes.
Yeah, but Men I definitely need to see.
Yeah. I am totally down for doing a review with you, like a deep dive afterwards. I'm wondering, because I feel like it's polarizing too. I feel like you might end up hating it. So we'll see. So just to kind of go through my list real quick, because I think we're going to have a couple of the same ones too. Mad God, you did not like, but I have it on mine, and I go into reasons in our review. It ended up being like the most streamed premiere movie on Shudder, but you know, obviously it's not for everybody. Danny's not a fan of the shit men that were in there. And then so now I think that you and I have 3 movies on here. Oh, no, 2 that are on the top list, right? So why don't you go into your list so we can kind of talk about them?
Well, I'll mention a movie. I only have 5 movies on here.
Okay.
You mentioned this one already in one of your prior lists, so I'll just throw out. I fucking loved The Black Phone.
Yeah.
watch we did what, 45 minutes on the Black Phone. So you know what? I'm not going to say anything more about the Black Phone. If you want to know what we thought about it, just know Pete liked it and I loved it. It's absolutely one of my favorite movies this year. One that I want to talk about, I did a video of this when I got I went to see this movie in the movie theater. I was the only person there. I got out of the theater. I went into my car. I filmed a review of it, and I think I accidentally it was either this or Studio 666. I was in a really angry place because it was the week that Texas Chainsaw Massacre debuted on Netflix.
Oh.
And Studio 666 and this movie, The Cursed, debuted in movie theaters, and nobody went to see them. And all anyone could talk about was the shitty Netflix Texas Chainsaw.
Right.
This movie, and I even said this in my review, this is going to be a movie that shows up, I think, on a lot of horror critics' top 10 lists at the end of the year. And a lot of people are going to look at that and go, the what? When did that come out? That was in theaters? Yeah, it was in theaters. You just slept on it. The Cursed was written and directed by Sean Ellis. And it's basically a period piece werewolf movie. But even then, it's not strictly a werewolf movie. The curse in question is really, really creepy. I don't want anybody to think they're going to see The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro here. It is a fresh take on werewolves that I don't think has been done before. I as a history person, I love the period setting of this. It's like late 19th centuries in Europe. Really, really enjoyed this. And I really wished more people had saw it. It also has one of the most absolutely generic titles in the world, The Cursed. I think it was originally called 8 for Silver.
Oh,
and
okay.
I think that would have been a much better title for it because that at least silver at least ties into werewolf mythology. And you might have gotten some horror fans who go, oh, silver bullets, werewolves.
Right.
But unfortunately, not a lot of people did see it. Last night, I watched a movie that instantly jumped up to the top of my list.
Okay.
It's Watcher.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Brand new. I rented it on Vudu. It is. It's also playing in theaters, some theaters here and there. It's directed by Chloe Okuno, who, if you don't remember who she is, I will just say 2 words to you: Hail Ratma.
Oh, okay, cool.
She directed Storm Drain, the part of VHS 94, which was one of my top movies of last year.
Yeah.
That was one of the most iconic scenes in that movie. It was actually a trending tweet for a while. The movie stars Micah Monroe from It Follows, and it's kind of similar to It Follows, especially for the first half. Basically, she moves to Romania with her husband, who gets a job there. Her husband is part Romanian, so he speaks the language. She doesn't. She's this, lonely person who's living in a foreign country, and she starts to think that a neighbor from across the way is watching her. But the movie plays with you. The title is Watcher. Is she being watched, or is she the watcher? And the movie plays with you and plays with the characters. Because it's set in Europe, because the main character is blonde, I got a lot of Hitchcock vibes from it.
Ooh, okay.
And then just when you think the movie goes in one direction, the ending, I won't spoil it, takes you back into another direction. Genuinely one of the creepiest, tensest 90-minute thrillers you'll see in a long time. Totally recommend that one. And then I think the last 2 are the ones that we have in common.
Nice. Dude, that movie sounds awesome. I kind of want to watch that with Sherry tonight. We have Big Brother.
I think it's the kind of movie that yeah, I think it's a movie you guys would enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, you said like Hitchcock and just what you're describing there. I haven't actually even seen that Hale Rotma, the movie. It's VHS 19 what?
94.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I haven't even seen that. And dude, you're giving me so many fucking movies I want to watch.
But we should get through this so that you can go see fucking Hamilton. The last two, I'm kind of wondering what order you would put them in, but I'm assuming that your last two are Fresh and X. Oh
Yes.
my god,
So fucking good, both of them.
Yeah.
So I bet you $50 both of them will be on my top 10 of the year list.
Oh, I mean, I've seen these movies have been on like every mid-year countdown I've seen have
Yeah.
these two movies. Sebastian Stan and Daisy
Yeah.
Edgar Jones
Yeah.
are so good in Fresh. Fresh
Yes.
does something that is so ballsy. Because
Yes.
if you go into Fresh, you're watching it for 30 minutes.
Yep.
And it's a rom-com.
Yeah.
It's a romantic comedy about these two kind of offbeat people who find each other in a grocery store, and you're rooting for them to get together,
Yeah.
and then the shit hits the fan. And like, I don't want to spoil it for people who
No.
haven't watched it. This is on
No.
what, Hulu, right?
Hulu. Yes.
Oh my! I'll tell you one thing about Hulu. Hulu tends to get and put out a lot of good stuff. A lot of the movies that I've noticed that I watch on Hulu, I tend to rate very highly.
Yeah.
The Feast was on Hulu also, I think. But yeah,
was.
this movie, man. I legit thought I had the wrong movie for 20 minutes. I was like, is
Yeah.
this the right? Like, Fresh is a title that could mean, like, there was a Lawrence Fishburne movie 30 years ago called Fresh. I'm like, let me make sure I'm watching the right movie. Okay, well, yeah, this is it. All right, I guess. All right, let me keep going.
So fucking good. Like, for this movie, I definitely don't want to spoil it either. There's nothing scary in the first like half hour, and it is just feeling like a rom-com. And you're like, okay, where's that little sign? Where's that little sign that something's bad? And there's nothing. And then all of a sudden, boom, it hits you. And a lot of times Sherry and I will split up movies into two parts or whatever because we have limited time to watch them together, right? And after watching like the first hour of the movie, I was like, oh fuck, I don't know if I can watch the second hour of this. It's not like the kind of horror movie where it's like so gross and like there's gonna be all these horrible things that you see, even though there is that too. It's like the idea of it is just so fucking disturbing. And like just thinking about it makes you kind of like not want to go out in the world. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
God.
I also like, it kind of reminded me of Get Out at one point, because
Yes.
you have like
Uh-huh.
her friend who's kind of
Mhm.
playing the
Mhm.
Rod from TSA role.
Right.
But it's so well acted.
Yep.
Sebastian Stan is one of those rare actors where, like, this movie came out like at the same time that he was like playing Tommy Lee on
Yeah. With
the
Pam and Tommy
Pamela
Lee.
Anderson
Yeah.
TV series, which I didn't watch. But like,
Right.
the fact that he can be like an MCU superhero, Tommy Lee, and this character shows his
Yes.
range. And like, this is the type of movie where both him and Daisy Edgar Jones, in a perfect world, maybe they would get Oscar nominations because they're so freaking good. But obviously,
Yes.
they're not going to. But like,
No.
it's really, really good. I genuinely love this, and I think now that you know the twist,
Right.
I think it's one of those movies that's going to lend itself to rewatchability later on.
Yes. It's the twist is so significant, and I definitely don't want to spoil it, but it's like one of those things where it's like From Dusk Till Dawn, or I think there's one other movie that's like kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn, where it's just that shift. And you
Yeah.
always wish that you could be a person that knew nothing about the movie, didn't even know the genre, and that you felt like you were watching one thing, and then you're like, ah! Like, I would love to show this movie to like my kid when she's older, and then like bill it as one thing, and then it's like, oh no, it's this. I kind of want to talk about what it's like, but I don't want to ruin it for people. So
Yeah.
we might as well go on to our other movie that I think we both agree upon, and that is X. And as a guy that has only seen The Innkeepers, I know that I am not as big a Ty West expert as you, but this fucking movie made me want to go watch all of his other movies.
So 10 years ago, if you would have asked me who is the future of horror from a directing standpoint, I would have said Ty West.
Yeah.
Before Mike Flanagan really like made it big. Ty West did House of the Devil, The Innkeepers, The Sacrament, all back to back. He was actually in You're Next. He like, and that's like his group. Like I think they were called like the Mumblegore group.
Mumblecore, yeah.
Yeah, and they were like I think it was I don't want to say incorrect names, but Ty West there was just something different about his movies. They felt very retro horror, which is, I don't know if I've made that up, but I like movies that feel like they are from a different era. And X is right up there, man. I mean, X feels like a contemporary of the Tobe Hooper Grindhouse movies of the 70s. I mean, to a point where part of this movie is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and half of this movie is Eaten Alive, which are both Tobe Hooper 70s movies.
Yeah.
And there's a twist in this movie as well. There's this movie, it could have just been a straight 70s style slasher movie. It could have been an exploitation grindhouse movie about porn and, blood. But it actually makes you like think about certain things, like the way we treat elderly people, even like older people and sex, and like those aren't exactly questions that I want to have in my head.
Yeah,
but like the movie is intelligent enough to ask those questions. There's issues of religion and rebellion, which are sort of topical today.
Oh, yeah.
Without it, again, going back to what we said at the beginning, without beating you over the head with these ideas.
Right.
I was so excited. Not really a spoiler, but they are filming another movie to kind of be a part of the X universe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a prequel of sorts.
Really?
So, and I want to shout out, obviously, Ty West. Thank you for coming back to horror in 2022, but also Mia Goth, phenomenal in this movie. Brittany Snow, like, if you only know Brittany Snow from High School Musical, right?
Yeah, or is it Pitch Perfect, or?
It's one of the, like, if you only know her from like pop music, like pop films, she blew me away in this movie. I was like, wow, I didn't know she had that in her. Jenna Ortega, again, MVP of the year, is really great in this.
Yeah.
I have no complaints with this movie. I was so happy when I saw this movie, and it turned out as good as it did.
Yes. I have two things to add to what you said, or maybe even just kind of expand on what you said. You said that it feels like it's a Tobe Hooper movie and it's from that era. Like Stranger Things season 4 just ended now, and Stranger Things I feel like is always like, hey, look, it's the 80s. Here's Madonna. Here's Light Bright. It's like always in your face, and like we're gonna play the most cliche song you can think of. Here's Stranger Things, and I love Stranger Things, but that's why I feel like a lot of
Have you finished the last episode yet?
I have not.
Oh, because you just said they play the most cliched song you can imagine. I can't wait to hear your reaction. No. It's not bad. It's actually good, but it's like, I thought okay, I won't say anything else.
Okay. But so like, that's the way that Stranger Things is, but this movie feels like it was made in the 70s. It's like one of those beautiful things where it's like, it feels like it's from a time, but yet it's got the mind of a modern movie, and it's able to. It's so great.
Well, I call movies like this retro horror. They just evoke whether it's they feel like they're of a past generation, or they're made to look that way, or they're set in that period. Movies like that, I feel like I really enjoy those types of movies. And like, I guess, like, not to belabor the point, but like comparing it to the Netflix Texas Chainsaw, which is a 70s idea, 1973, 1974, but setting it so modern, like so modern. Like you're like, oh, we're woke people who are trying to reinvest in a small town, and we're filming things on our, oh, we're gonna cancel you, bro. Like it's like, okay, we get it. Like, like a movie like that 20 years from now is going to be laughed at for being so dated. Right. Whereas X is like, what's the word they use in paper? Like evergreen, where it's just, it's going to live forever. You can put that in any, it feels 70s, but it works in 2020. It'll work in 2040. It would work in the 90s. It doesn't matter. A movie like that, it just works.
Very, very well put. And it does have a bigger cast than a lot of the other movies in my top list. There's like at least 7 or 8 people in this movie. But one thing I'm seeing that's consistent with these lists is that there's some like really beautiful fucking movies in this list. Like there's some shots in this movie. There's one shot that's both scary and beautiful in this movie. I don't want to give it away, but it's an aerial shot. And I just love that fucking shot. And I think about it a lot. But that's just one of many great fucking shots. Like with horror, people always get excited about the scares and how brutal it can be and how suspenseful. But I think the exceptional movies could almost like stand alone without that. And just like look at how fucking beautiful this is. Look how well edited this is. And that's what elevates some of these other movies. I'm not talking about fucking elevated horror. I'm just talking about what makes a movie stand out above the rest. Is like the filmmaking behind it. And X is just a great fucking example of that.
Agree.
Yeah. So we're only halfway through the goddamn year, but I'm just super fucking excited, especially when we're getting towards Halloween time, because that's when they're going to shove a bunch of these down our throats.
Oh, yeah.
We have Nope coming out soon. And I mean, I think we're just, we got a ton more to come. What do we got coming up on our channel?
Well, tomorrow we're doing an interview with Michael Moreci.
I've heard them say Moreci.
Well, we're interviewing him. He's one of the writers of another horror movie, which I put in my good section, Revealer. That just released on Shudder last week. So check that out. He also has some books and some other cool shit going on. We're going to interview him tomorrow. And that'll probably be up on the channel at some point soon. When Charlotte gets home from Sleepaway Camp, her and I are going to watch and review Sleepaway Camp.
Perfect.
It's funny, I wrote here the 3 best horror movies I saw in the movie theater this year so far were The Evil Dead, The Fog, and The Thing, because I saw all of those because of either Fathom Events or Alamo Drafthouse doing like the Carpenter movies.
Right.
So Charlotte is really interested in seeing more John Carpenter. Shudder just put up their Prince of Darkness. We're going to do a deep dive on that, which is one of the lesser known Carpenter classics.
Yes.
Can't wait to talk about that, because that movie, I know Chris also loves Prince of Darkness. We always talk about that as like, what's one of the most underrated horror movies you've ever seen? Prince of Darkness. It like always pops right up.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to be doing that. What else?
I mean, I just did an interview with Brett Nelson, who adapted the movie Manborg from Astron 6, the guys that made Psycho Goreman. I've just been interviewing authors like almost like once a week and just popping them up on the channel. I interviewed Laurel Hightower a couple weeks ago. That's on there. Then there's Brett Nelson. I'm also going to interview, I forgot his name. But another horror writer who wrote Circus Oasis. He's part of Encyclopocalypse. I'm going to interview him this weekend. So there's like almost like once a week, there'll be like horror author interviews coming up on our channel. And then, I think that either me and Danny and Charlotte or Danny and Charlotte will wrap up season 4 of Stranger Things 2 on the channel. So there's a lot of shit, the summer's heating up. And if you have not subscribed to our channel, please do. Danny is just putting out content constantly on here. And we also invite you guys to check out the reviews that we've done of some of the movies on this list.
But, and also, if there's movies we didn't mention, throw them in the comments. Let us know what movies we need to see. And that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah, really good point, though. Yeah, we want to know what you guys like for 2022 so far. But anyway, until that time, this is Danny and Pete signing out. We'll see y'all